Hello, Alison. It's very nice to have you back on Lawbreak.
Hello, nice to see you.
Very nice to see you too. And we're here today to talk about a subject. It's still very early on in the investigation of Project South, but it's been a pretty big scandal in the Toronto police world and in the legal community. I think many of us have been taken by surprise or shocked because of the, let's say, how big this problem is. It's not the first time that police are in the news, but this is a bit different because it's not just an isolated case of police brutality or police doing their job and things going wrong. It's really more of an organized crime kind of thing where police are involved and working with criminals. And of course, it raises a lot of issues. It has lots of implications. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about because I know you've been very vocal about this and you have lots of things to say about this. So it's called Project South. So let's start by talking a little bit more about what is Project South.
It's an investigation it was led by at least the York Regional Police into corruption by well, primarily the Toronto Police, although there's officers from other cities that have been at least suspended, although not criminally charged. And the allegation is that they're involved in organized crime, drug trafficking, attempted murder, release of confidential information, on and on and on. It's a big mess. And I suspect going to get bigger, although we don't know that.
Right, that's the thing, because as mentioned, this is still at the very early stages of the investigation, and it seems like there are a lot of outside police forces that are in charge now of this investigation. I think it's York
It's York.
Police that
Yeah, and
is,
they charged Peel Police as well. If I'm
right,
being honest, it's shocking, but what's shocking to me is not that police officers were involved in this. What's shocking to me is that police officers were actually charged with these sorts of things
right.
because I'm of the belief that there's a lot of this going on in the police, and this is just scratching the surface. Most of the time, charges are never laid.
Well, and that is one of the big issues in this case because, I mean, there are allegations of organized crime. And what we know about organized crime is they operate in chapters, right? So they have different, let's say, units or forces in different cities or different places. So who knows what kind of other equivalents they have in other police forces. I mean, we don't know the extent of it. It could be even outside of the GTA, not just Toronto and the surrounding police forces. It could be in other places in Ontario or even maybe outside of Ontario. And we don't know that yet. Which puts us now in a situation where it seems like this could create a kind of crisis in the trust between, well, us lawyers first and how we deal with the police and the files that we have with these police forces or police officers involved. And then there's the question and a second layer of the public trust in the police forces. So let's just get into, for example, as a lawyer, if a lawyer has now files with the Toronto police that involved, because some of these police officers are active police officers, a few were retired. But then what's the implication of that, Allison?
I mean, it could be huge. Like, it depends. And I've just started the process because I've got probably 200 files that are Toronto police files
Yeah.
right now. And so digging through every single one of them to see who, if any, of these officers were involved in it is going to be an enormous undertaking. But it has all sorts of implications. It'll
Yeah.
obviously depend on what role the certain officer played in a particular investigation. If they were just, guarding a scene or whatever, then it's probably not going to make much of a difference. But if they're a testifying officer, I don't know how, as the Crown, can proceed because there's obvious credibility and reliability issues with these officers now. Um, what, if anything, is the Crown going to disclose about the case against these officers? Probably nothing, I would
Hmm.
assume, but I also assume we're all going to be seeking it. So it's going to probably lead it to all sorts of litigation about, what, if anything, we can access about Project South if we have these
Yeah.
officers on our cases. And yeah, it's going to be a total mess. Total mess. But I mean, the first thing that pops to my mind is I have so many files where um, an accused will say, I had $50,000, but the police only reported seizing $30,000. Like it happens in the vast majority of cases where, at least according to our clients, the police are
Mhm.
pocketing a lot of the money that they find and
Yeah.
underreporting what they find when they execute a search warrant or whatever. Um, that's the kind of case to me that this could have enormous implications on because these are alleged criminals now, right? And that's the exact sort of thing that they would do. So if they're involved, and I know some of them were guns and gangs officers, if they're involved in any search warrant or charter cases, the Crown is going to have a big, big problem.
Well, I mean, that's it, right? How can we as lawyers trust when they're charging people? And who knows, maybe there are instances where they're called to the scene and they let some of these people go because they're, let's say, working with them on these other projects, because it seems like they were working with some known criminals as well. So it's not just that they were doing some crimes. They were actually working with known criminals in the Toronto region. And
Yeah.
probably if there is a case that involved these criminals, well, they will probably let them go and not charge them. How is that fair for, let's say, the poor person who's desperate, who doesn't know how to make money, who then just finds himself selling drugs to survive, either because he's a drug addict himself or because really there's no other way for him to make money in these difficult times. And then they go hard on this guy and
Yeah.
probably let some other people go away who are more criminal than this guy. So,
Yeah, and there's been some suggestion. I don't know how clear it's been, but there's certainly been some suggestion that, like in the GTA here right now, one of the
yeah.
big issues is the tow truck wars, right?
Mhm.
And all these shootings and arsons and everything that has to do with towing. And there seems to be the suggestion that there's a very heavy link between these police officers and their activities and all the tow truck wars. And so we're talking about like big time dangerous criminals that they're involved with in whatever criminal underworld they're
Yeah.
involved with now. And there's so many enormous projects right now in Toronto that are directly related to the tow truck wars. I have clients on several of them. I suspect these officers are going to end up tied to those. And what happens then? I mean, one of them is a gigantic mass shooting. There's serial arsonists, and like it's a problem.
It is. It is a big problem, and it raises also this issue of trust and how are we going to handle these cases. I don't know if the Crown Office had said anything about this yet. I've heard the police. We know that there was a press conference where the police have finally spoken about this, and obviously they're shaken because, I mean, we have to be fair here. Not every police officer is bad. There must be some who have a little bit of, yeah, I agree. I mean, from our work, we see the bad side of policing,
Yeah.
but I mean, in fairness, there are maybe some who, like,
Yeah,
we
they
have
haven't
to be
been
fair
corrupted yet.
here. Like,
The
some
young
of
ones.
them don't, like I'd like to believe that there are some police officers
Of
out
course
there
there
who
are.
are doing
Yeah.
it for the right reason and who are not involved in this. But right now, it puts the police, at least the Toronto Police Service, in a very difficult situation of trust.
Hmm.
Not just us lawyers. Well, okay, let's assume that defense lawyers, that's our job, right? We're always against them. So people are not really going to give that much weight to what we say, although we've been always, very vocal about what police do. But from a public perspective, this is also concerning because one of the things that we know so far, and again, I just have to caution, this is at the very early stages of the
Right.
investigation. We have more questions than answers. But so far, what we do know, it seems like there was also mishandling or they were using private information that, they weren't supposed to use for their own criminal motives or reasons.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is, from a public perspective, I think very concerning.
That's probably the most concerning part,
Right.
right? When you call the police to report a crime, for example,
Mhm.
and agree to sit down and provide all your information, you expect that to be held in trust by the
Yeah.
police who are there supposedly to protect you and help you.
Yeah.
How can you be confident in that now? Like um, I've read, and again, we don't know how accurate this is, but that the release of information has been linked to 7 shootings. I mean, I'm not going to be
Shootings.
giving my
Yeah.
yes information to the police if it's going to result in my house getting shot up for some reason, right?
Right.
I mean, that's scary. One of them, the one that's been publicized most is the guard at the or former guard at the Toronto South Detention Center,
Yes, and
and
let's talk a bit more about this. Yeah.
yeah, so the allegation is that, and I know a lot about this guard because I've done litigation about him. He's known as Harry Potter by all the inmates at the Toronto South. And I don't know, I'm assuming, but don't know that this is the reason why attempts were made on his life. But he has been involved in sort of the systemic routine torture, for lack of a better phrase, of inmates at the Toronto South, all sorts of demeaning and humiliating and illegal things that he did to them just for fun.
And sorry, just on that, like as a parenthesis, let's not forget that recently we saw videos from Maplehurst as well,
Right,
how the inmates were treated there. So this is
right.
also starting to become a problem of how they're treating inmates.
That's right. And I have, this isn't just third, fourth, fifth person, broken telephone stories. I've litigated this particular issue about this particular officer
Hmm.
and won charter applications about it. One of his favorite things to do was long story short, take an inmate into an empty cell in the A&D unit and make them strip naked and sit on the toilet and order them to have a bowel movement and surround them by officers who were just standing there watching them as they're sitting there naked on the toilet,
So just
saying
public
all sorts of
humiliation.
exactly. And that all was at the hands, uh, it seems, from what I've litigated in court of this officer who the
Hmm.
attempt was made on his life. So I assume that it's because of his treatment of the inmates there that they somehow arranged these hits on his life. I don't know that. Maybe he was involved in some other illegal things as well, but that's certainly my hypothesis at this point. And it's scary that they would be able to, of all people, get his address and contact information from the police.
Hmm.
He as awful a human as this man may be, he was entitled to police protection
Right.
because inmates were so upset with him, not the exact opposite, not police assistance in an attempt on his life for crying out
Hmm.
loud.
Right.
Scary.
And obviously the police would have known why that information was being sought.
Right. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And it would have been through, I mean, obviously they would have already had sort of personal relationships with whichever inmates at the South reached out to get this information and organize it. So obviously the involvement in the underworld predated if it wasn't like some inmate said, "Hey, I'm gonna call, my local police
right.
officer and say
Yeah.
I need his help on a hit."
Yeah.
Clearly not. There was some relationship before that, but um uh, yeah, it's scary. Like who knows, but it seems to me this is the kind of thing that's gonna blow up to be a lot bigger sooner rather than later.
Well, that's the concern. And if it does end up being bigger and involving other police forces as well, or members of other police forces, the question then becomes, Allison, how do we trust the police? Because, as defense lawyers, again, we're always bringing attention to the fact that there are some problems with the way police officers are doing their jobs. It doesn't seem like the public, it gets a lot of public attention, but this really is getting public attention because it's not us. It's not defense for the first time. When defense are speaking, nobody really cares like that we're yelling and screaming about something. But
Yeah.
here it seems to be bigger. And then the ultimate question is how can we trust police officers when this happens?
Exactly. Like if I'm a domestic violence victim
Hmm.
or a sexual assault victim and I call the police to report it, can I be confident that my information, my safe place that I've gone to is not going to be revealed to my abuser? Like No, I don't think so. Not if
Right.
it's in the hands of the wrong officer.
Right. And that's a very good point because what if the abuser is, let's say, also happens to be a drug trafficker working with the police?
Right.
Because what if he's one of these people that the police have been trying to protect or work with? I mean, I don't know if it was for protection purposes, but there definitely was uh, some assistance in the commission of
Oh yeah.
crimes. So that raises this other point that what if, you have a complainant against one of these criminals that the police have been working with? What can they do with her information? Uh, like it's all these
Exactly.
questions that we're having right now. And in terms of let's go back again though to the criminal lawyer, criminal defense lawyer. When we're requesting now, when we have a case that involves a police officer, so for now we can't really do it at large and other with other police forces, but at least with the Toronto police,
Yeah.
from a defense perspective, um, what should we be looking for? What should we be asking for in the disclosure about police officers? I mean, usually we ask for the McNeil,
Right.
but it seems now that we need to know more than just that about the officers.
Yeah, we've been talking about this, and the reality is I don't know the answer, but I
Mhm.
think occurrence reports related to officers involved in our case, is that an unreasonable thing to ask for? I don't think so necessarily,
Yeah,
not at this point. If they've been, because heaven knows they are very often, if not the vast majority of the time, not charged criminally if something goes
right.
wrong, right?
Yeah,
So, occurrence reports, misconduct reports with the police services board, those sorts of things. I mean, I don't think we generally do ask for those sorts of things in the normal course. I think probably should. Um, I think we have to start paying a lot closer attention to those sorts of things. I generally don't. I mean, I look at the McNeil report and that's it. Um,
right. Because why
and
would you, right? Like usually
right.
we just have this presumption that they should be doing their job. There shouldn't be anything against them, unless, like maybe the McNeil, that's when we get to see that, oh, well, maybe we should ask for more. But usually we
Yeah,
don't go beyond that. Or,
exactly. The other thing I'll do some, and like in charter cases or credibility cases, I'll search judgments, for the
mhm,
officer's name, that sort of thing. But
right.
I think it's time to start digging a little further.
Well, what will be interesting to see as well as this case unfolds is what kind of deals they will get. I mean, how are they going to be treated, right? Because are the charges going to be ultimately, like, is there going to be a deal that is going to be struck with them? I don't know. I'm curious to see. Are they going to be treated the same way? Well, we know one of them who's been charged, like with the heaviest set of charges has been denied bail, so which is good.
Yes, which is
And
good.
I mean, that's an important step because given how there's always a lot of complaining on the police part or the government part that, like criminals are being let loose, they're granted bail when they shouldn't. At least it was good here to see that this police officer was denied bail.
He was, although the other six were all given promises to appear,
Mhm.
which, given the allegations, I'm not sure most of our clients would have been
Right,
given. So
right.
I still think there's some double standardness going on here. But yes, it was good to see that at least one of them was held. He had a much longer history.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference. But the rest of them were all just given PTAs.
Well, and then that's what's going to be crucial in this case. It's to see how they're going to be treated as we get more information
Yeah.
about these cops and what kind of deals they're going to be getting. And, then it will just become a matter of fairness towards our clients who are not police officers. Like,
Mhm.
why would they, because this is huge. It's not just the actual criminal offense, it's also almost they're abusing a position of trust and authority.
Yeah.
They're using their position as officers and the trust that the public gives them with their private information, and they're using that to commit crimes, the very crimes that they are um, after.
Yeah,
So it's just like
exactly.
a big mess. And
Exactly. I mean, I feel like in a weird way, somewhat validated. Like, see, we told you.
yeah.
Not really the point, but it's. I think, like I've always thought that there needs to be much more discussion about the police and their powers and um things that go on behind the scenes. And I don't know. I mean, at least this has led to public attention and public discussion, which can't hurt in that regard. Although there was the Toronto Drug Squad case 10, 15 years ago. I'm old now. I don't remember these things, but quite some time ago, 2006, I think it might have been. And I think everybody said the same thing then, and nothing changed. So maybe not, but the public attention on the police and the activities of the police cannot be a bad thing,
Mhm. Right,
at least.
right. And what do you think, Allison, um, the root problem or cause of this is, or might
God,
have
I
been?
mean, I think most people who go into policing do it for the right reasons, do it because they want to help and, that sort of thing. But like something happens to your brain when you get there. I mean, it's like it's like organized crime, not in the sense that it's being used in this sense, but the thin blue line. Something happens to all these people that had good intentions when they joined policing once they become police officers. And I don't know why that is, other than there is so much corruption that goes on there. You have to, when you join, I mean, any officer who has been a whistleblower will tell you this. If you do not, because there is so much corruption within the police, if you do not, at the very least, nod and smile, uh, but more likely join in, you're not going to make it.
Mm.
Um, officer after officer after officer has spoken out about this when they've had to leave policing because they wouldn't do that. And their lives are made living hell. So it's there's just so I don't know how else to say it. There's just so much corruption and criminality in the police that either you join them or you leave them, and your career has gone bye-bye. That I mean, that's the reality of it.
And like you said, it is very similar to organized crime in that
Yeah,
sense that it's you have to follow what's going on, and if you don't like it, then you'll be in danger. Your life will be in danger, and probably your entire family will be in danger as well. And that's scary that this is
yeah.
happening within the group of people that that our society has entrusted with our safety and protection.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah. And it's obvious, it's there's portions of the police service that are worse than others. Like there's certain divisions, certainly in
right.
Toronto, that are notorious
Yeah.
for corruption and charter violations and all
Hmm.
that sort of thing. But it is we need to understand the depths of it and how to change police culture. And if this is a small step in that, then great. I hope it is.
But now, based on what we know so far, and again, we still don't know a lot. We don't have a lot of information.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do mention a really important point because if there is corruption, there has to be a change in the police culture.
Yep.
Um, but how do we get to that? Because if this is something that because we don't know how long this has been going on, and clearly this is not something that happened a year or two ago. It's been something it's something that has been going on probably for many years now, maybe
Yes.
decades.
Probably.
And how do we change that culture?
I mean, I mean, really, you have to just blow the whole thing up and start again. But failing that, I mean, I think there needs to be some sort of oversight board that has teeth that
Mhm.
which we don't have now.
Yeah.
Like the SIU is useless for the mo vast majority of the cases. The police are useless because they, it's a thin blue line. Even when you call in another police force to investigate something, who trusts that? I certainly don't.
And yet
Um,
this is what's happening here though, right?
True, yes, I was pleased to see that. I mean, I suspect it's just because when, if it was just the drug involvement and the leaking of personal information and um, some charges related to stolen cars and that sort of thing. Quite frankly, I don't think anything would have happened, and I don't think any charges would have been laid like they
Hmm.
usually aren't. I think the reason they had no choice this time was because um, an attempted murder became involved that they obviously had to investigate. They couldn't turn a blind eye to that. And when the pass led to the police, they were stuck. They couldn't obviously just through out an attempted murder investigation. So I th pardon the skepticism, but I think the only reason charges were laid this time is because they had no choice, because they couldn't turn a blind eye to an investigation like that. Particularly one related to, a Toronto South Detention Center guard. So I think charges were only laid this time because they had to be, not because the police were doing the right thing, if I'm being honest.
Well, and then that raises the whole question of can we ever trust the police again? And maybe like if this again, if the information that we start to get from this investigation reveals that the problem was much bigger, and it probably is going to be much bigger than what we already know, the issue is can we still continue to trust the police institutions? But what could be an alternative? Like what should we have? Like who would be there to like a third party to make sure that they're really doing what they're supposed to do? Or are we going to be in a position where we have to create some other kind of safety or security force other than the police? Um,
I think it needs to be some sort of independent civilian board that um, has the ability to review police conduct. Like the police oversight board or whatever they're called, that's useless. They just rubber stamp
yeah.
budgets. The SIU is, for the most part, useless. So it's got to be not ex-police officers. Like,
Hmm. Right.
it's got to be people who have never been involved in policing that are trusted
Not
with
even
police
crowns,
oversight.
probably, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Nobody that has ever been involved in policing or has, had close relationships with them as part of their career, like crowns. It's got to be completely independent people, judges, defense lawyers, dare I say, um, and just random civilians with expertise in whatever. Like there's got to be some sort of board of completely non-police related people that have the ability to review police conduct, access police records, investigate that sort of thing. I think that's at least the very least the first step.
And I wanted to ask you, Allison, I don't know if your reaction was that as well. I personally was shocked to, I mean, we know as defense lawyers that police do have, I mean, we know the problems that we deal with police officers through our clients. But still, to see this type of problem happening in Canada is what I find a little bit disappointing because it's the type of thing that we hear. Well, we know right now in the US, there's the whole Epstein thing going on, huge corruption file. But it's the US, right? I mean, we're
Yeah,
used to hearing these kind of crazy stories coming out of the US. I was
exactly.
a little bit shocked that it's happening in Canada. Like that's, I think, what makes it even more concerning because I'd like to believe that Canada, we have better, have more robust, and we have a better justice system and policing system. So to see this was really concerning, I find, because it's happening with a Canadian police force.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree, although, I'm probably more skeptical of the police than most people. So, I wasn't surprised because I've got, so many files where money was stolen, drugs were stolen, all sorts of things that I'll never be able to prove in court. But do I believe my clients? Yes. So I, I mean, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. To be honest, what shocks me is that the charges were laid rather than that it happened.
Okay.
And I think, like I said, it's just because the police had no choice. Like I did a case years ago where, long story short, in the middle of a murder trial, the officer in charge got arrested and charged with impaired driving and some other offenses. And we couldn't, for the life of us, my co-counsel and I, figure out why the charges were laid. We normally what happens when a police officer is picked up for driving impaired, they're given a ride home. They're
Hmm.
not charged. Like that's
Right.
reality is that's just the way it was. And turns out it was because when the officers who didn't know he was a police officer at the time went up to the car, he took off and led them on a chase, which they had to radio in. And so at that point, it's on paper. They had to lay charges because they couldn't just sweep it under the rug because they'd had to do a radio call and blah 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 blah. And I think the same thing is the case here. If it was just drugs and stolen cars, charges were never going to be laid. It's because the paper record in a shooting led to an officer that they had to.
And yet, even the drugs and the stolen money aspect of it is still shocking because, like police officers, they work for the government, they're paid. It's not like they're not paid. Why are they looking for more? Like, why are they trying to get more money or get more, like that's also concerning. Like, isn't what
Because
they're
nothing will
getting?
happen.
Yeah.
I guarantee for any defense lawyer out there, when you have a new uh, drug file for the most part, and you get the disclosure and you get the sheet of paper that shows how much money was seized from your client, according to the police, before you tell your client the number on that page, ask them how much money they think they had, or
Hmm.
approximately how much money they had with them. I almost guarantee they're going to give you a bigger number than is written down on that
Hmm.
page. And they're not making it up because you didn't tell them what's written down on that
Right.
page, right? Almost 100 times out of 100. So, and that's why, because I've worked on so many cases where, like, that's now my practice to ask them that. Often we don't end up pursuing it in court because it's just, who are they going to believe, the dude
Right.
in shackles or the police
Right.
officer? But there's the odd case where you actually can prove it. That you litigate it in court. But I mean, because of that, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I wasn't.
Well, but then for defense lawyers moving forward, especially in the Toronto area, maybe this is going to be difficult for us lawyers who practice mainly outside of the GTA.
Gus says
Um,
not to trust the police.
right,
Isn't
but
that right,
then
Gus?
but then how are lawyers going to be using this to their advantage in cases? What's going on? Because I mean, that's a good opportunity now to really, especially when police officers have to testify. I think now we need to use that. So do you intend on using that, Allison, moving
Oh
forward?
boy. I'm still at the stage of digging through to see, what cases might be affected, but
Hmm.
um, I'm going to any case where one of those officers had,
Right,
I mean, maybe not guarding a crime scene, but any role really. I'm going to want them to testify. They're going to be on my witness list at the prelim. I'm going to, take every opportunity I can to try to get these officers, make it so that these officers have to be in court for my clients' cases. And then, I guess suppose step one is hoping the Crown just decides, yeah, we should probably just pull this before this gets real ugly.
right.
Because our clients' interests always have to be at the forefront rather than just our petty fun. But after, I mean, I guess we have to wait until we have a little more information.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, I'm going to try and make every single case be one in which those officers need to come to court.
the ones who are already involved and we know.
Never once in 20 years have I made continuity an issue in any case. Might be now if they were in the
Right,
chain of custody.
right.
Yeah, so I'm going to do whatever I have to get those officers into
Yeah.
court.
And we have to watch out because I mean, I think it's fair to say that there's going to be more officers involved in this mess.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Like they have suspended both in Toronto and Peel, a number of officers suspended but not charged. Same thing as far as I'm concerned.
yeah,
Um, and I'm definitely going to want access to those, the records about the reasons for their suspension. Whether I'll get them or not, who knows? I think I'm entitled to them. It's going to be, I mean, the poor Crowns, honestly. I feel bad for it. I can't imagine the Crowns waking up that morning and opening the newspaper and having to do that because they know, any of the cases that these officers are involved in have just turned into a giant mess that they didn't need.
yeah. Well, and there's also a massive conflict of interest
Mm,
problem as well. So, I
yeah,
mean, there's going to have to be whoever's going to prosecute this is not going to have to be from the GTA.
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
going to have to be people from maybe other jurisdictions.
Like
Uh,
far away
yeah,
regions of Ontario, I would
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah. Because it really is messy. I mean, it's messy and it's very disappointing. But in a way, from a defense perspective, it kind of confirms what we always say. We're always, telling people that there are some problems with the police. And I guess now it's not coming from us. It's just coming from the police themselves. I mean, we have nothing to do with this, which
Can
is,
I get "I was right" tattooed on my
yeah.
forehead? Is that inappropriate? Maybe I'll maybe I'll at least a fake tattoo. Yeah, exactly. At least the public is gonna get some exposure to the issues.
And one final thing that I wanted to say, because it reminds me also a little bit of what was going on in the Zamir case, where in that case, there was clearly from on the defense side, a lot of people were seeing how this was a case where it wasn't murder. There was just a big, messy situation that led to an unfortunate outcome. And where at the beginning, the public was so enraged against this poor guy who was like with his family on Canada Day. And then as the
Exactly.
trial unfolded, obviously people started to realize, well, no, I mean, like the police have messed up in this case. So that was a case on its own. It was just the police officers maybe involved in this case. But now here we're seeing that no, there is more of this problem and it's on a bigger level.
Yeah,
So it kind
exactly.
of,
Yeah. Public attention and public exposure can never be a bad thing.
yeah, yeah.
Always.
Right. And what do you think, finally, Alison, do you think that the public can have anything to do with this? Like one thing that the public can do to just demand more, because I think like this is something, one thing we don't want to happen is for, deals to happen and for this to go away. Like this has to, we need to keep this open
Yeah.
because it has larger implications. And I think the public can have a role in this. What do you think members of the public can do here, other than just being outraged by what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, demand answers. Call your local counselor, call your local MPP, demand, don't let it just be swept under the rug. Ask for answers and demand answers. And they can't ignore you forever.
Right. And also, I mean, like from a public perspective, as we mentioned earlier, it's your private information that could be at stake because who
Yeah,
knows whose information they're looking for, what they're using it for, and that's, I think, one of the big problems in this case is
yeah,
the revelation that they've been using private information in ways that they weren't authorized to use them. So,
exactly. As if I were a domestic violence victim or a sexual assault victim, I'd be petrified, to be honest.
right,
Yeah.
right. All right. Well, this is definitely a story to be continued because we're still at the early stages. We don't know how this is going to unfold, but I'm afraid it's going to get bigger. Um, so we'll
I'm loving
see.
every second of
Yeah,
it.
I know you are, and this is why I was very happy to chat with you about this. But we'll probably see what goes on and we'll have maybe another chat about this in the future. Thank you so much
Sounds
for
good.
being back on Law Break, Allison.
My pleasure.